Welcome to Hard on the 80's, formerly Gratuitous Boobs, where three old friends get together and watch the movies that warped a generation.
So why don't you tell the story, John?
All right. Revenge of the Nerds is the timeless tale of young men going to college and being singled out as being outcasts. And then it's the story of how these nerds are victimized by the jocks, the alpha beta fraternity, and then the steps that they go through to try to regain their dignity and the revenge that they get after being attacked, and the kind of ongoing back and forth struggles from these young men as they grow into young men.
Right.
That's right. Yes.
You mean as these like much older adults play like they're in college?
That was the first note I wrote down. I'm like, that guy looks 40.
Yeah. Some of them were younger. Well, Booger was 31 and Lewis was 30.
Lewis was the one who looks 40.
The other ones were at least early 20s. Well, okay. Most of them. Stan was 26. But
well, it was funny. I sat down and I was kind of like, okay, Revenge of the Nerds. All right. I'm like, how what have I signed up for? Because I did watch it last night, which is uncharacteristic of me. Normally I do these things first thing in the morning, but I watched it last night and then I was like, oh, an hour and a half. Okay, I can handle an hour and a half. It's just when they get to like an hour and 59 or 2 hours and 15, and I'm like, oh my God, stab me. I can't handle it. So it starts off with who is it? Lewis in his bed with the covers up to his neck, and his mom comes in, and it was super weird because I was like, wait, isn't that the same mom from 16 Candles? Like all the moms in 80s movies look it was like the exact same hairstyle. Her voice was kind of the same. It was super weird to me. And I was like, okay, I never noticed that. Like,
are you trying to say that all white women look alike? Is that what you're trying to say?
Totally.
That's well, I think that's how you got the second word formulaic on your notes.
Seriously.
And before we jump in, I know the reason I think that I postponed watching this movie is I didn't remember. I know that I had watched it. I absolutely loved this movie.
Yeah.
As a kid. I mean, as a young. I mean, this was, and more will come up later, unfortunately. But I watched this many times. I was a huge fan. It was such a great movie. Mm-hmm. But then to know how troubling it was going to become at certain parts, made me really not want to revisit this.
No, it was so bad. It was so bad.
And yet, again, from a grand scheme, there's parts of this that are they're really good. And it's funny, and there's a great story, and then a smattering of horribleness. But back to the young men off to school. And they're about to head off to college.
Yeah, so they're in the car, and it's a total stereotype. They're driving 35 miles an hour, right? With their dad in the car and
in the sweet station wagon. I did the details. The nerd details are so good. The station wagon with the fake wood paneling, the clothes and the pocket protectors, the laugh, which is so epic. The nerd laugh is so good.
Totally.
And like those little details I thought were great in establishing like just the absurdity. And you're not watching a drama. I mean, this is the absurdist comedy, which is what makes it fun.
So it is. So it starts with. Oh, go ahead, John. What were you going to say?
I mean, I love that. And as they're driving the car, they talk about the school they're going to has got the best computer department in the country. And I'm like, that kind of dates this. Like computer department is
computer department.
There was a time when kind of like, it all goes into one category: computers.
So I love how they like pull up to the school, right? And they get out, they're unpacking their stuff, and the father and son have like a little heart to heart. Like, I'm envious of you. You're going to do great things here, and then they carry this super heavy chest across the courtyard. I was like, couldn't you have just parked them closer to where they lived? So once again, it was like, okay, like they're just trying to make stuff happen for the sake of making a movie. But I was like, it makes no sense. It was like this.
I like that bothered you. the
Well, and
logistics of that.
It really bothered me. I was like, that's stupid. That's so stupid.
I struggle with that too, because you're trying to set them up to be these really sympathetic guys, and in the
And
course
smart.
of carrying this box, they cause accidents. They step on people. They ruin a bunch of people's days.
Yeah, they
they're
walk
supposed
through
to
their
be the smart
picnic.
guys. They're supposed to be the smart guys. You don't
Right.
park 100 miles away carrying a heavy box. You know,
And
what
I
I'm
want to
saying?
say something else. So I thought the beginning, there was something so beautiful about that father-son moment was really nice. The fact that he speaks to the other boy who lost his dad, and it's like a fairly emotional, kind time.
I
It's
agree.
really pleasant. It's just so tough to know that boy's gonna date rape somebody later. It
Well,
makes it tough
if you go
to
back to the car conversation, and he
Yeah.
did a
Yeah.
calculation of
Oh,
how
so-
many boobs they would. I was like, ew.
So good.
Well,
It's such a great line.
As sweet
mean-
as the dad is, who is played by the guy who is the old man in Babe, you know, that'll do
Right.
pig. He's got this kind of real skeeve to him, you know, like he's checking out the young girls. He's excited by like his young son's gonna live through his lust, you know. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh boy, this is a little icky already.
Oh,
It
that's
was
interesting.
super icky. It was super icky. Although the music started off, I thought of you, Jimmy. I literally wrote in all caps the music. Jimmy's gonna love this. It was so bad. But then what was really funny is the music started off really terribly 80s like, but then it was a lot of more, I thought they added a lot more really good songs
Great
from the
soundtrack.
80s. Like, the
Yeah.
soundtrack
Yeah.
was really good except for the like filler music. I was like, what is this? It's so terrible.
Yeah.
But
But speaking of the music, can not to jump ahead, but can you guess what was my very favorite part of this movie?
the performance. Please,
Well,
there.
yeah, but no, there's something else that I even liked more. I'd say.
Oh, that wasn't it. I
I
got
give
it
up.
wrong.
Well, there is, but there's a dark past that goes along with that song that I'll have to discuss later.
Oh,
but
shit.
no, cleaning montage.
Yes.
The only thing I like more than a training montage is a cleaning montage.
Oh, right.
And it had a robot that helped clean. It had mishaps. Again, hour and a half of cleaning montage, and I'm in.
I was watching this with Lisa, and that I screamed montage.
My notes say cleaning montage. F yeah! Exclamation point. And and then put one foot in front of the other song. It was just man, that was my okay. But I jumped.
Well,
ahead.
let's go back because we as they're in the process of moving in, they get exposed to the jocks, to the alpha beta fraternity. We get to see Ogre, the character who, you know, plays the kind of Cyclops villain bad guy.
Yeah, what was up with that? So was that guy's eyes really like that? Like he did a whole movie with like one eye crossed? That must have hurt. It had to be painful.
He's made quite a living out of playing that role, though.
I mean,
been in
that
some
screaming nerds, that's iconic.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
so terrible.
And it's,
we get,
he's holding a guy over the ledge, and just a little attempted murder, letting go of him as he greets them. But yeah, that was a good start.
Isn't that a Suge Knight move
yes,
now? Yeah,
yes.
maybe he learned it from Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Did you say Suge Knight? I think it's Shug.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
Shug.
I think it's Sujet. I thought he was French. Is that not?
Suge Knight?
I thought it was
No,
an accident.
Shug.
There's an accent.
I've never met the man.
I don't know. That's
I'm just
probably
saying
for the
black
best.
names, man. Black names are weird.
He's like, I read it in the Washington Post, in the New York Times. I don't know. I do it phonetically.
Well, so and we're introduced to Stan, who is the handsome leader of the Greek Council. Beautiful feathered hair. He's
What else was that guy in? I couldn't-
everything. He was in
Everything.
Married with Children. He was in Happy Days.
Oh, he was the Happy Days. Okay, it was the second generation of Happy Days,
Yes,
like the Joni
yes.
Chachi days.
Right.
That's
when
why
it
I was like,
off
why
the
does it look
rails.
so familiar? Yeah, when Happy Days lost all its cool.
Yes. Post shark jumping.
Oh, shark, yeah.
It jumped the
And
shark.
although what he's in recently, he's the awesome husband in Shrinking.
He's the neighbor in Shrinking.
Yeah.
He's so good in it.
So
Interesting.
good. He's
Interesting.
great.
So yeah, so they get introduced. There was a very young John Goodman. I had no idea.
Wow.
I think that was the
Kills
youngest
it.
thing I had ever seen him in, like when he was that young. I really only remember him from Roseanne, you know? So to see him so young, I was like, oh wow, okay.
It's kind of like Fast Times, and like there's a lot of actors that went on to do a lot more. Like, I mean, even the main nerd is in
Top Gun.
Edwards was in Top Gun and ER.
And Goose, he was so cute. I was like,
Goose,
oh, he's cute. Even as a nerd, he was the cutest little thing. You know,
but
you
that's
guys
your
know
wheelhouse.
It is. I likes me a nerd, man.
I was thinking about going into this. I'm like, is Shonda just going to be all talking about this like it's a porno? Like, oh, yeah.
Oh. Is this like what Hardbodies was for me? Is this going to be Shonda's Hardbodies?
I have to say the two main nerds were very attracted to me.
Come on.
I know I was.
That can't be true.
I swear, I'm not lying. I was like, oh, they're kind of cute.
Man, so good.
So we get exposed to the Alpha Beta party
and frat party.
And I was fascinated. I almost watched it again because they are so happy. Everyone in is just like, hey, they're gonna go jump down the stairs, and everybody goes, yeah. And everybody runs over there. We're gonna go do this. Everyone's like, yeah. And the other thing I noticed is there seems to be a correlation between how much fun they're having and how much beer they spill.
Yes.
Right.
I have written down so much wasted beer.
So that fraternity party was so stereotypical. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but I was in a sorority in college. Did I ever tell you guys that? Because it's kind of a secret. It's kind of a secret.
Oh, this is a podcast exclusive.
Big reveal.
Only because they kicked me out. I got kicked out.
Oh.
It was about a year and a half in, and they were just like, "This girl is not sorority material."
Oh. And that's a badge of honor.
I know.
My really good friend that I still know today, we talk about it all the time. We went to junior high school and through college together. She actually had to ask me for my sorority pin back.
Oh
when she asked for it back, we just looked at each other and cracked up laughing because she was the president. And she's like, I got to kick you out of this sorority.
It wasn't like you can't be trusted. You're a renegade. You need to turn in your badge and your gun.
It actually was kind of like that. I didn't like anybody telling me who I could and couldn't hang out with. It got a little cheesy for me. So it was okay. Being kicked out was a good thing.
Well, I want to drop into this because I was in a fraternity, as was Jim, and my fraternity experience was identical to this movie because I was at a school and we tried to start a fraternity, and we had a connection to a national, and so we had to deal with the Greek council, and eventually they said we could start our own. So like this idea of trying to connect to a national fraternity, which is part of what the characters in this movie had to do. I'm like, I lived Revenge of the Nerds.
Lambda.
So we wanted to be, I think, I don't know, we were connected to a national, but then we started, it was Phi Sigma Tau was our fraternity. Jim was in it as well.
Right.
And so cool. We all three of us had the experience of Greek experience. So we can speak to this movie.
I just remember beer being more coveted, that no one was filling tubs with it and splashing it everywhere.
Yeah,
beer was a little more valuable.
People. When did that become popular? Just spitting beer on people. I don't understand.
I know.
That's rude.
And how does that, I mean, so Ogre, that's kind of his thing, is he drinks out of a massive cup, like a trophy, and he drinks it, and he's constantly filling his mouth with beer and spraying it on people. And people seem to just think it's adorable.
They're like,
maybe he doesn't drink. Maybe this is he's like trying to,
he's like Cookie Monster. He's like Cookie Monster. He just,
right.
Doesn't go in his mouth. Yeah.
Or bulimic, or he just he wants to, he doesn't drink, but God forbid that the ogre, the big cool tough guy, doesn't drink, so he just pretends to drink and just spits it everywhere.
Spits it on everyone.
That would be an awesome angle.
What I thought was really funny about the introduction of the nerds, the jocks seeing the nerds and then them like becoming all unhinged when they see nerds, and then the way they just like bullied and picked on them. I think one of the fair themes to 80s movies is bullying. There's a bullying theme in everything like that, but I guess that was kind of very true of the 80s. There was a lot of bullies in the world. I mean, I still think there are a lot of bullies, but it was just so readily accepted. So I just find it super weird how these like nerds, they all move into their little area, and then the school is okay with these jocks just going in and
Well, it's
kicking these
all
kids
you
out of
need. You
their
need it for the
beds.
setup. You need something for them to revenge against, and so
Right.
this is the plot point. This is the
Well,
origin story.
but what happens is so the fraternity party, they have a fire and which burns down their house. And that enthusiasm and that positivity that they are showing through their drinking continues through their house burning down. They are so chill and so happy. And
They're
I'm like,
roasting marshmallows.
these guys should be life coaches. They're so like, hey, we can handle this.
Mention they burned the house down from a guy blowing 150 proof liquor from his mouth on fire. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. The guy in overalls. The guy in overalls is gonna fuck something up.
Yeah.
I just knew it.
I would definitely join that fraternity.
But I also so in that scene when they're out there and the coach shows up, John Goodman, who just kills it. To your point on funny sort of logic things, I love that at, I don't know, midnight, the coach is in full coach gear. He's got a hat on, a vest, he's got a whistle. Does he wear that to bed? He's got the short, like he is in full coach regalia in the middle of the night. And I get why, because you're trying to establish this as the coach. I just would like to think that the coach at some point takes off his hat and goes home. Like, it just turns that off.
He has sex in those clothes. He's in coach mode all the time.
Yes. You don't turn off that coach. Yeah.
So the house burns down, and that means that they need a new place to live. And so the administration says, take over the house where the nerds are in.
And then sets them up in the school gym. Yes. Like they were in it just was like cots in a gym. I mean, it just was like there's
the little kid calls it a refugee camp.
Not
wrong.
This is they don't even
FEMA operation.
Yeah. Right. And it's very similar to, they are refugees because they don't get asked to leave. The jocks violently go into it and throw them out the windows and assault them and literally drive them from their homes like refugees.
Right. So I love the part. So then they kind of switch. The jocks are lifting weights. Did you see how the main character was lifting the weights?
Oh my God.
I wanted to ask Jim about this so much. I'm like, Jimmy, can you analyze this workout routine?
What muscle group is he working? I think he was working like...
That's if you're trying to tear the tendon in your elbow, you do that. Like if you need to get out of something. It was the worst form of, I don't know, it was almost like he was like doing a crawl stroke, but with like 20s in his hands. It was like, dude, every possible ligament in your arm is struggling through that. It's the worst exercise.
It was hilarious.
No one said, hey, dude, just do like a curl, like a normal person. Like what was he trying to do?
It's so funny. And so they're kind of like, they're having this conversation about how they're going to get back. And then I do love that the two main characters, Lewis and
Gilbert,
decide that they're going to go ask the very popular sorority girls what fraternity they think they should. Now, this is after a fraternity has already kicked them out of their own house. And then they're going to go ask, the popular fraternity or sorority girls. So what fraternity do you guys think we should go after?
There's innocence and then there's just stupidity.
Well, okay, so I think Lewis may be on the spectrum.
Oh, for sure.
Because
he's not picking up on the social cues.
He has no idea that this is it, that he's going to be attacked verbally by this person. He's just no clue that he's out of his league.
But what's crazy is that she still attacks him, and then he still asks her out on a date, which led me to a question for you guys, because I always have a question. Yeah, it's like, how was it asking someone that you were really attracted to or thought was just super cool? What was that like for you, asking someone out on your very first date as young men in the 80s?
Okay, this could be a whole separate podcast, because the first time I literally asked a woman out on a date was 10 months ago when I asked my current girlfriend out. Up until then, I was afraid to ask women out directly like that. I would more say, hey, does Susie like me?
Yeah. So to avoid asking a girl out, I had what we call the 3-year plan to a one-night stand. And that would involve a very long friendship courtship, getting to know someone. And yeah, no, I was terrible at asking someone out. On the occasion I asked someone to a dance. I usually knew what the answer would be. But
Interesting.
no, that was the most horrifying. It felt like there was, if the person says no, there was just no coming back from it. I
Right.
felt like,
Yeah.
Right. Well,
how do you
it's so funny.
possibly come back from?
It was, yeah, it was so it was like it was a very sort of like a light bulb moment for me because I was like, oh God, that has to be very difficult. Because especially in the 80s, right? It was always the assumption that men ask women out. And of course,
Right.
we've come a long way since then. Because I'll ask a guy out in a second. I'm like, you want to grab some coffee or some food one of these days?
Nice.
And not have any problems. But what it must have been like for young men to be doing that in the 80s there had to just be so much pressure.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified,
Great.
and I also was afraid of being like an aggressive
Right.
dude. Like
Right.
I was scared of being aggressive. I was scared of rejection. We didn't have nearly the kind of consent culture that we're starting to build now, where it's okay to ask for things and someone say no, and it's not the end of the world. Whereas I think back then, if I said, "Would you like to go out?" and someone said, "Not really," I would be like, "My life is over."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I had a friend in school who desperately had a crush on this girl, and I remember him struggling with asking her out, and then he finally did, and she said no. And I remember him breaking down into tears. And I was like, I was young at the time. I couldn't understand why it was so hurtful. But now I think about, God, the courage that you must have had to have like mustered just to even ask the question in the 80s, because the time was just so different, especially if you weren't popular or considered good looking or part of that it crowd.
Right.
So yeah, really, really, really crazy. So yeah, so the fact that Gilbert doesn't get the social cues and it's just like she just attacks him and he's just like, yeah, you still want to get some coffee? I was like, fuck yeah, dude.
Really heroic.
Yeah.
Heroic.
Well, it also takes him 3/4 through this movie to say I just realized that I'm a nerd. It was like, really? When you started the movie, you had on a pocket protector and a tie on your way to school. Like you weren't aware that you were a nerd up until then?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm not sure you see in the mirror what the rest of us are seeing.
Yeah, it's
so in the gym, we get a kind of a roll call of our nerds. And it goes from the kind of cartoonish Poindexter nerds with the glasses and the tape to horrific stereotypes.
Oh God. Why was
So
that okay?
We've got Lamar, the gay character, and Takashi, the Asian character, and they're played so far.
Well, and it's so funny because if you kind of like if you jump into any sort of conversation amongst Black artists in the movie industry, and there's literally been this whole like breakdown. It's a conversation, and you can go back and there's lots of them about how the movie industry was definitely, every time you had a Black man, they were always trying to make them more feminine. It's a whole conversation about Black men in dresses, like trying to get them dressed up in dresses or making them more feminine. So this kind of really dove into that, and this is still a time, it's the 80s. We're not seeing a lot of Black people in movies. There's always that one token, but no more than that. There's never 2 or 3. There's never women. It's always men.
I was thinking a lot about this movie and the representation in it. And I mean, so like we loved this movie. This is a movie that you watched over and over again. And what was the Black character? Yeah. A ridiculously flamboyant gay person. And it's kind of like we watched was it Mannequin? Also over the top flamboyant Black character.
Yeah. And then the same thing with 16 Candles and the Asian person, right? And it was super funny because I noticed in this movie, in Revenge of the Nerds, that his accent sometimes would be really, really over the top and deep, and then sometimes you didn't hear it at all.
Yeah, like... and I do love the mocking of his how well he speaks English. Like, how well does Booger speak Japanese? to make fun of the word fresh, like when he
Yeah.
wants to say flesh. Like, really? How's your Japanese coming along? I'm
Yeah.
guessing not as good as his English.
Yeah, so it was that when those kind of scenes came on, I just kind of rolled my eyes and I was just like,
And
oh man,
the
80s
thing is,
movies.
they didn't have to make so at one point, for example, he's wearing a samurai headband and stuff. Like, why? It was so
Yeah.
unnecessary. He could have just had an accent and not been misunderstood, but it was so classic 80s stereotype stuff. It was really over the top.
Right. And I think that what I kept thinking about watching this was that this was totally acceptable. And what this established for us kids was that these anything outside of the white majority, it's totally okay to make fun of them. Like you should feel no guilt, no shame. Look, this is what our media is taking these cultures and just turning it into material for jokes. And I remember having no sympathy for those characters.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it was really interesting. But so now they've gone to the girls, right? And they decide that they're gonna, I guess at this point, they need to create their own chapter, right? So they are like, okay, so I loved in the movie how they're like, well, we sent a photo of ourselves and everybody turned us down.
Yeah.
Except for the one. I was like, oh, that's so terrible. And so then they come up on Lambda, which based on the movie, you can see in all the pictures, is historically a all black fraternity, right?
Yes.
So and they find a loophole in the bylaws that says, hey, you guys can't turn us down because we're not all black, right? It has
to be on a probation for 60 days. Yeah.
It's like you have to consider us. And then comes the nerd house party. Which I fucking loved, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, that party got going. I mean, it took a while. It took a while.
It was a slow rolling snowball, but when the weed came out, everybody had a good time. I'm just saying.
That's right.
Marijuana makes everything better.
Right. That's the message. So there's a point I'm going to put justifying quotes, the revenge later against the sorority. So the sorority does come over and writes a song to say, we would like to be your dates to this party. And they're so naive, they don't get that the hottest girl sorority is probably not really that interested in them. But they say, great, we've got dates with these beautiful women. Which, of course, later they will get their revenge in a much darker way than standing someone up. But
in my sorority, we did stuff like that, right? At the very beginning, we'd go and like serenade these fraternities, which I always thought was cheesy, which then took me straight back to, so I pledged, right? And then I had to go through the ceremony of getting, installed into the sorority, initiated. And you guys, I laughed through the whole entire thing. It was just so weird with the candles, and there was all the cloak and dagger, and I was just like, oh man, what have I done?
Well, I can't believe they revoked your membership.
Well, when he hands them rubbers and then they played the sound of a goat in the background. What are these for? Like, whoa, this is why this is rated R, I guess.
That was awesome. I mean, just the set, like that they were tricking them, presumably.
Jim,
also, an unrolled condom, which I don't think anybody ever wants to be handed an unrolled, presumably unused condom. Like, you got to give someone that in the packet. That's how this works. In the packet.
Condoms are so gross. I mean, they're gross in general, a necessity, but gross. The fact that someone hands you
don't give someone an unraveled condom.
So quick condom story. So I'm working in the design district in San Francisco, and we're having a huge event, and our regional vice president manager comes out. He never comes out to anything. The wind is whipping around, and it creates this kind of cyclone tunnel in the front of our building. And this purple balloon rolls in. Oh. like horrified, because I know what it is.
That's not a balloon. Oh no.
But one of my colleagues knows what it is. My regional manager's like, why don't you just pick that up? And I'm like, I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
I'm not touching that. And then finally we kind of had to tell him, hey, that's a condom.
Oh, jeez.
It was terrible. It was
Man, San
terrible.
Francisco's a magical place.
Anyway, yes, an
Yes.
an unrolled condom, gross. Sorry.
So I've been somewhere in here. There was a scene that was my favorite line of the whole movie, and I can't even remember where it was now. But they said that this person he's been found guilty of mopery, and they said, "What's mopery?" And he goes, "Exposing yourself to a blind person."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they go back. So let's go back to the party for a second, the house party, right? And I think it's Lewis. I don't know if it's Lewis or Gilbert. One of them is like, this party's kind of a dull. Maybe it's the music. And then he goes and he puts on Swing Low, Sweet
for the African American guy that's watching them to like impress him, which I love that then Lamar quickly turns off to put on something else.
And he gives him this look like,
yeah. He doesn't know any better. Again, not picking up on social cues.
Right, exactly.
But that at least, I mean, that was at least they were acknowledging that there is a line that is inappropriate in their joking, whereas like everything else in the movie, it's like, oh, come on, please acknowledge that this is offensive.
And it was great. It was right by the stereo in the background was a Michael Jackson poster of him in a yellow cardigan and a brooch that I had up in my room.
I wrote that down.
I had that poster. I love that poster. I loved that poster so much. It was one of my favorite posters. And my mom would come in the room.
Michael at his height of his powers.
My mom would just look at it, because my mom was like a Sam Cooke, like fucking Marvin Gaye kind of woman. So when
Marvin Gaye wouldn't have worn that brooch with the yellow cardigan.
That was a great thing about the 80s, right? I mean, even though we didn't say it, we pushed the lines of femininity or gender when it came to clothing in the 80s. Madonna, all the hair, the bracelets, the jewelry, the makeup, the eyeliner. It was a thing in the 80s, which I love that part about the 80s.
Well, another very 80s thing is at the end of this party, which finally takes off. Everyone's having a ball. And very, very horny crowd. Good, God bless them. Yeah. And then they send in the mean fraternity Alpha Beta send in a bunch of pigs to disrupt the party and be offensive. And then when they go outside to see who's done this, they sing a song, and then in the most 80s thing ever, they moon them, which I thought was, man, mooning. Yeah. What? Well, mooning just had its day, and then it was such an 80s thing, and then it's just not a thing anymore.
Well, they took it one step farther in that two of the guys mooning wrote their own names on their asses.
Yeah, which you know what that means? You know what that means? What? Someone else had to write that. Because you can't write your own name, and I say this with experience, on your own ass. So someone, hey, bro, dude, in a non-gay way, can you spend a fair amount of time with your one hand on my butt, with the other hand bracing, so you can write awesome. That was I had not occurred to me till just now
I think mooning went out of fashion because you could be considered a sex offender if you move someone these days, right? So you can't go around doing that anymore because you could literally,
I guess that's
like, have funny. Something go on your record for the rest of your life.
Right, mooning turns into going door to door, just saying.
It's called mopery, I think.
Mopery, yeah, moonery, yeah.
There was another thing in the party that Lamar, that he's wearing a balloon hat.
Yeah.
And then at one point, they make it so obvious that his balloon hat, it's like a dick in his face. Yeah. I was like, oh.
I missed that. I missed that.
Well, he kind of puts it in his mouth as he's flirty dancing. But you know what? To be fair, given this movie and how brutal it treats a lot of, minorities, they don't really lay into the gay guy. I mean, Lamar is treated pretty equally.
Right.
And I mean, there's things that are offensive about it, but they don't make a to-do about that.
Yeah, there's not really one comment about it, really. You're right.
Even with the very serious, African-American head of the fraternity, and they say, we won't limit by race, creed, and the guy says, and sexual orientation. Even he doesn't make a to-do about it. He kind of just sort of sighs, considering it could have been much, much worse, given
True.
This is an 1884 movie. It is handled surprisingly well.
Well, what I love about the party is the girls. The sorority
awesome.
girls are all the best.
They're great.
It's so
the
great.
mega moves.
The mega moves are just down. They're down. They're like,
Dude, that made me want to go to college.
Yeah, they're just so much more fun. I love that these big girls are like, dude, we just want to party, man. And it's just
have
awesome.
a good time. It's awesome.
I know. Way more fun than the pretty girls that don't know how to party. They were great.
And again, this goes back to the recurring theme of my dream scenario is when the forward women, these girls get high and they start just grabbing at crotches. And I'm like, this is why I want to go to college.
You want to live in the Sadie Hawkins universe where the girls have to ask out the boys.
For the same reason that I was just saying, like you talked about earlier, Shonda, like asking a woman out. It was so scary that I fantasized about these women who would be forward. Yeah.
So now the pigs have come. They've been insulted again by these jocks. And it's like, okay, what are we to do? And I think they go back in front of the council and they're denied, right? So now they say, well, we have to overturn the homecoming committee, right, in order to get our way with regards to having our own fraternity.
Right.
Well, first they decide they have 2 acts of revenge that they do upon the fraternity and the sorority. And so the ones against the males is that this seems like within the realm of prank. They put like hot
like menthol almost like stuff on their jock straps.
They put like menthol on their jock straps and okay, that's not that big a deal. But to get revenge against the sorority girls, they criminally sexually assault them.
Do you see the look on my face? I was like, what the fuck? They like set up cameras. They're following them around. They're going into their rooms. Like everything that they did with regards to revenge on the women was completely and utterly illegal.
It was wrong. It was so bad. Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell? And then it gets even worse. After the cameras are set up and they're just sitting in the room, watching
the panty raid, and the idea that it's funny, the idea of panty raid being like a funny thing, and yet it's so. I mean, how scared would those girls have been? These dudes just barged into their place and stole their underwear, and then they're running around. I mean, and not to mention that then that whole time they're installing cameras in their rooms.
I will.
So bad.
I did write down though that we got to 51.03 seconds in the movie before we first saw real boobs.
Oh,
so
and real they were. It was not the 2020s.
Wasn't the big hard body boobs.
It wasn't the boobs of that our science can build. They were very real and beautiful.
This is,
science can build.
If you're just joining this podcast, we originally
I made my own. I made mine. Okay?
That's right, yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's magical.
The original title of this podcast was Gratuitous Boobs, and this at 51 minutes in, this movie delivers.
It does. And then it gets really good. Yeah. Then this movie suddenly has a point.
It just has it has a point that it's
softcore pornography. Yeah.
Well, so there's a
hard to enjoy knowing that you're spying on them, though.
Yeah. And so the nerds then are in their fraternity house watching these cameras all night long, like addicts. They can't sleep. They're just like they just can't pull away from this. The women sleeping, looking at their butts while they're sleeping, looking at them while they're taking clothes off. And then there's one, they pan down. And I remember vividly this line of a booger going, "We've got Bush. We've got Bush."
It's such
it was so terrible. It was like the creepiest, and it was the first time that my stomach kind of turned, and I was kind of like, I was like, yeah, this is
it went from bad to worse at that point.
And
yet that's like the super iconic line,
right?
Not to mention there's a 12-year-old boy with them watching,
right? Yeah,
which is also against the law.
Yeah.
I'm not on top of the revenge porn side of it. But also it's a super iconic line. Also, I don't think anyone's ever said, "Oh, I'm tired of looking at these boobs. Pan down." It's like, really? Does Does anyone feel that way? Anyway,
well, every time I've spent the night looking at spy cams, I've always.
So yeah, there's only so much can be said about how that's not an eye for an eye situation on
No,
revenge.
yeah, that was
Like, you
that
mess
was
up our party, we're going to criminally assault you.
yeah.
Essentially.
So then we get to, okay, look, the only way we can get our own fraternity is that we have to overturn the Greek council.
Right.
So then they have to win the
Homecoming Carnival.
Homecoming Carnival.
Yes.
And it starts
just how all elections are determined. All positions are determined.
That's what we should do in the United States.
Yes.
Yeah. So
you want to win my vote?
The first
like an episode of Gladiator.
The first event in this school sponsored thing is a 20-lap tricycle race that involves drinking a beer at every lap, which would be 20 beers. 20 beers. I would have been long dead after 11. I mean, I would have been just like, and then there's a murder charge. Like it's involuntary manslaughter. Like who could drink 20 beers?
What's his name? What is the guy? The Asian
Takashi
is on the bike, right? Did you guys listen to the music?
Yes. Oh God.
Well, but what
bicycle built for two and some bicycle built for two.
Yes, I had the subtitles on, and it's a Japanese song, "Bicycle Built for Two," which made me like it so much more. It felt so much less just mean spirited or something.
That's true. I did not have the captions on, so I missed that, and I just thought it was horribly offensive.
No, I knew what song it was. As soon as I started playing it, I was like, "This is Bicycle Built for Two." Yeah, I've got a great ear, Jimmy.
Wait, what song is that? What's Bicycle Built for Two?
It's an old like song from, I believe, the 30s, and you'll look sweet on my bicycle built for two.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so I only hear it in Japanese, so I can. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so he uses science and takes a pill that counteracts the effects of the alcohol, which allows the nerds to use their brains to win this jock competition of beer and athletics.
Right. Yes. So that's the first one. And then what's the second competition? What do they do? I remember the
tug of war, and
I remember the tug of war, which I thought was brilliant of the nerds to just let go.
That was
like,
great.
We can't win. We're gonna just like
that was best.
You win.
And there was a Trojan horse thing where they had to try to shake someone again. Ogre spitting beer on everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the breadth of events is so fantastic. You've got like a tricycle race, and then you've got tug of war, which is okay, I get that, and then a belching contest, which is bonkers, and then javelin, like a real super highly trained event that not a normal person can do. Like javelin is an extremely complicated skill-based event that's an actual Olympic event, unlike drunken tricycle racing or belching. Like it's like clearly the writers are like, it'd be funny is if the limp wristed thing and the aerodynamics, but it's just I love the breadth of this contest.
And then it comes down to the very last contest, which is the talent portion of things, right? And I felt like the one thing that they got super true in terms of my eyes anyway, is that is exactly what the jocks and the popular sorority girls would have done. They would have been like, oh, wouldn't it be cute if we switch roles?
Everything is
and
so
then they
funny
put on a
if the
subpar
cool
cheesy,
jocks are in
cheesy thing,
Yeah. Well, we actually skipped past the fundraising.
The fundraising.
Portion.
That's
oh my God, those pies. Oh my goodness.
The revenge porn really kicks in.
The revenge porn.
So terrible.
Ouch. So the nerds they sell pies that are selling like in crazy. Everyone's buying 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they realize that the reason why they're buying them is just whipped cream on top of a pie tin with a screenshot from their cameras. And so it's a topless photo of Betty. And that
who is unaware.
Yes, right. A non-consensual photo that they are selling revenge porn to make their money.
The people are, it was just so gross. It was really, really gross, which then leads into her wanting to, have a moment with her boyfriend only for him to reject her. And then it becomes...
Okay, can we just take a breath? Because this.
So
oh God.
I want to ask: is as bad as that one? So the kissing booth, a very legitimate way to raise money.
I don't think
Is
you'd
that
do that in the
real?
day of COVID.
I was gonna say, was it ever a real thing? I mean, I've never seen an
It
actual
was a
kissing
real
booth.
thing. Kissing booths were a real thing.
And you'd pay, and that seems like such a weird
Yeah, no, it just
thing.
seems like
Feels for like going to a strip club or something, like paying for attention. I don't know. It seems weird.
it's
Certainly
so
doesn't
funny.
seem
We're all just so
sanitary.
quiet. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just like, no, I can't
Well,
do it.
because
I mean,
if we stop now, we don't have to talk about what happens next.
okay, so let's talk about what happens next. Do you want to
So
explain?
she gets all fired up at kissing booth because kissing strangers gets her real hot and bothered. So now she is horny.
So she
And
I'm
goes to
just
her
so
man.
creeped out. I can't
yeah.
even say anything. It was so creepy to me. I was like, oh my goodness, she just got raped, basically.
Yeah, so she goes to her boyfriend who's dressed as a fake looking Darth Vader. Clearly, they did not have
Yes.
the rights to use the Darth Vader character, but he's got a Darth
Yes.
Vader like mask, and she wants to have a moment of intimacy with him, and he says, "Man, you're like a goat. Like,
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
just want it all the time." So she gets frustrated and runs away, and Lewis realizes
Yes.
that he is wearing an all black outfit as well, takes the mask, puts on the mask, and follows her into the fun house and proceeds
Hell
to
of a fun house.
The
though.
bouncy fun house, right? I was like, they
Man,
have
it's got
these
like a
back
moon
then?
room. Like that's just a fuck room, right?
I,
Like
I didn't know about
There's-
bouncy houses until
there's
like,
nobody
10
on
years
this
ago.
thing. It was a water bed. Like nobody's in this room. Like this is that like a brothel room? It was
It's a
amazing.
bouncy brothel house.
Yeah.
and proceeds to have sex, go down on her, and apparently please her in ways that she never has. So she says, "Oh my God, you've done things you've never done to me before." He crawls back up her, removes his mask, and she is momentarily surprised.
1 second is surprised and startled.
Here's
1 second.
How
Then
disassociated do you have
grateful.
to
Then
be?
very grateful.
How disassociated do you have to be to not have any sense that the body on top of you is not
Yeah.
the same one that you have your partner? Like, you got to be pretty checked out as a human being. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So she's thrilled. Says that there's a line that I remember so vividly. She says, "Are all nerds good at sex like you?"
Yeah.
She says, "Yes." And she goes, "Why?" Because all jocks think about is sports and all nerds think about is sex. And so that was so significant to me because at that time in my life, it was a long time before I would ever have sex. I was insecure and nervous, and I'm never going to be able to be with somebody because I'm nerdy and lame and I have acne. And I remember that scene and being like, okay, here's the way. You got to learn to be good at sex.
Oh.
And so
It's terrible.
I had like 4 books that had stuff about how to be good at sex and
Really?
techniques. And yeah, I was super,
Wow.
I wanted to be good at it when I got old enough so that I could steal a woman away from her man.
This is like a self-help movie. This is
It's so funny. I've been very quiet during this scene because it was just so wrong for me. I was like on so many levels. I was just like, dude, this is awful. Like I have no comments other than just ugh. You know,
and I think
like,
the most troubling
the most
troubling part is it did not occur to me.
Right.
You know, it never once, and granted I was like 11 or 12 when I saw this movie, but even so, it just never, you know, even for years, it never occurred to me that was nefarious. And it's just because it's so messed up. But
Yeah.
it's like you almost just didn't see it. I mean, not that
and
that
it-
would have been okay at the time. It's like I just didn't even see it. I'm so blind to
and it's the same thing. Like I told you, this is one of the few movies that I saw of the 80s. And I think that this whole scene, probably just because unlike you guys in terms of being like young men who were thinking about sex, I was a young girl and like sex was like the farthest thing from my mind. So it was just kind of oblivious to me. But so this part of the movie was just sort of like, oh, boring. You know, like
Yeah.
I kind of
Okay.
just blocked it out. But as
Right.
seeing it again, I was just like, holy shit, this is so terrible.
I saw it referred to
oh.
online as rape by deception.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Mm,
yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh, so gross. So
Uh,
now that disgusting part
Yeah.
of the movie was over, then we see the talent show,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So So this is where I would like to not bring up, but I know that a couple of people that do listen to this podcast, like Jania and Buffy, will point out that I cannot skip that I had a very elaborate lip sync to that
In high school.
performance in high school. That we did. We had all the characters. Everybody matched perfectly. We went on to a city competition in another high school. And Jason Leo, an Asian friend, played Takashi. I mean, like it's so bad. We had big dudes playing the girls.
Was Joe Ring was Poindexter? Am I
Joe was
remembering that
Poindexter.
Who was the black guy?
What's that?
Who was Lamar?
So my friend Pat, who is not African American, I was Wormser. I was the 4 foot tall Lambda and came out with my Michael Jackson jacket, legit jacket, and we did a little breakdance thing, and it killed. Like, because it was all it was like the guys that played Lewis and Gilbert were perfect, and I mean it was amazing. So. Again, I've watched that scene 10,000 times. We did it down to there's a grainy VHS somewhere of this, and we just thought it was so great, and it was great. It was such a fun celebration of it. It's only later that I realized that movie is problematic.
Well, it's a really interesting. I mean, it demonstrates how acceptable it was. That here, this is several years later. You're in high school, and still nothing about it set off any warnings that this might be not cool.
Not Takashi in a Native American headdress.
That too.
You guys had that outfit, right? You had the Native American.
He did. He had a headdress. Yeah, but also, why was he dressed as a Native American? Was there any rhyme or reason to that?
What's the point of that? It was like, I don't get it.
Oh my god. So yes,
and then
it's so good though. They clearly win the contest, which is the best part.
So watching that scene, and yes, their talent portion was so much better than the popular fraternity and sorority part, but it took me back to the 80s, and I was like, what was it about 80s music? Like, what was it missing? And I realized there was no bass in 80s music. None. There's no bass. There's no real bass that hangs on. That's why you hate it, Jimmy.
Yeah,
there's no bass.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I was just like, where's the beats, man? There's no bass.
Man,
it was really terrible. And so now we know that the nerds have won the Greek, what was it called again?
Council.
The competition. The Greek.
John called it earlier. Carnival, homecoming carnival.
Yeah, or something like that. So they've won. And I love how the coach just gets super upset about it.
And I love so the alpha betas and the girl sorority, their skit involves a powder puff switcheroo where the guys are dressed as cheerleaders. But I'm like, this is so out of character because these guys are so macho, and suddenly they dress up in full drag for the skit.
I think Shonda nailed it. This is exactly what everyone expects. This will knock it out of the park. This is so funny that the guys will dress. The big tough guys
happened in my high school. That happened in my high school where the girls would be like, "Yeah, let's be the guys," and the guys be the girls. Like, so
man, the girls at your school had funny voices.
Yeah, none of them sounded like.
But John Goodman, he's so good in this role, and he says a line that I hear it in my head about once a month, which is "You just got your asses whooped by a bunch of goddamn nerds." I think it's so good. He's so good in this role.
So now
there's a breakup scene. I love the breakup scene where the main frat guy is in drag being broken up with by Betty. And Betty says, "God, I'm in love with a nerd."
Well, no, we got to go back. We skipped the part. So now the coach has basically incited violence, right? So now they go to the nerd house and they destroy their house. They'll destroy their house, right? And then Lewis and Gilbert are having this really kind of actually probably one of the better acting scenes in the whole entire movie, when you kind of can see their range, because they're really clearly upset about what's just happened to them, even though they just won the competition, right? So he's going back and he's just going to be like, no, man, I can't handle it anymore. I'm going to go say my piece, and he storms back
pep rally.
to the pep rally and tries to snatch the microphone off the stage.
Well, what I think is so that there's that rampaging scene has got all the jocks in drag, so they're dressed in their cheerleader outfits as they destroy the fraternity house of the nerds, which I think is a really so here we have this idea that revenge of the nerds, so they retaliate. And then they get crushed again because strong, violent, cruel people will always win.
Yeah.
So then they go back and he grabs the microphone.
Right. And now, he's the jocks are, he's saying his piece and the jocks are about to retaliate. And then come in all the llamas. So as a black girl, my chest just pushed up. I was like, yeah.
I love it. These badasses with Jerry curls, and it was the best.
Guys roll in and they're like, now what?
Yeah. That still made me cringe because
really? I loved it.
Well, it was great, except that I'm like, wait a minute. We're to believe that these men are all dangerous because they're black.
Oh, I just thought they were big.
I think it does definitely build build into a stereotype of black men, violence, being big, and all that kind of stuff. I still liked that they showed up.
Yeah.
Well, there's no Revenge of the Nerds without them, because without them, the nerds get crushed by the bullies.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh shit, that's a bummer. Yeah. It still took brawn. It still took brawn. And a twinge of racism to do it. Yeah.
A twinge of racism.
Tin of fear-based racism to get you past the finish line.
Exactly.
Oh, that totally sucks. Because that speech at the end is such a great end. It's such. I mean, it may. If you took out the troubling parts, there's such a great. This is so good. I mean, for the silly movie and all this stuff, this is such a rad.
If you took out the troubling parts, this movie would be 2 minutes long.
6-minute movie. You've got the drop off and then the end scene, and it's great. But this is it's a silly movie that then has this great ending. And the coming together, and it's so funny. And the We Are the Champions that are playing, and the nerdy alumni. I mean, it's actually really great in its silliness and stuff. It's such a nice completion.
And I wrote it down. It's based on the formula, guys. Public displays of resolution.
Oh my god!
Every movie,
you nailed it.
Public displays of resolution.
Well, but I also I couldn't help but notice that the Revenge of the Nerds was totally ineffective. The revenge things that they did not help at all. In fact, it incited more violence. The only thing that really helped was this kind of Gandhi-esque going on and he shows up wet from being bullied. He displays this kind of cruelty, and the public, seeing that cruelty, says, this is not okay, and so it's not the revenge of the nerds that actually works. It's the, appealing to the compassion of people.
Right. Vulnerability when you have of the nerds.
The strength of the black people to hold it down. So it's a combination. Yeah.
You guys can't see this, but I'm throwing them.
Black power from Shonda.
Yeah, the tri-lambs, man, coming in hot. That was the best.
They were great, and the lead of that fraternity, the administrator, he was just the coolest guy ever.
He was the coolest guy ever. Yeah, you win. Yeah,
he never judged or mocked too much the nerds. He saw them being bullied, came to their defense. Like, he's the hero of the movie. He came to their defense at the end.
He never defended him in the beginning. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think,
but he was proud of them when
they went to their party.
When they called and said, "We did this. We put this, the liquid heat on their jock straps." He was like, "Look at you guys standing up for yourself." Like, he was the most supportive. He could have been the most dismissive, and he wasn't. So John, I want to talk about your renaming the title instead of Revenge. What should it be? Like the vulnerability of the nerds?
Well, I'm just saying that the
passion of the nerds.
Yeah, the non-consensual rape of the nerds.
Well, we were saying this.
Don't
I was thinking more along the line.
nerds.
Yes, that's also what it could be. I was thinking along the lines of, you said it wasn't the revenge that had any success. It was the appealing to compassion. So the compassionate appeal of the nerds.
Collective nonviolent action of the nerds.
All right,
but that's not what happened. That's just.
I think we've run this one in. Should we summarize?
Yes.
All right, I'll go first. So, like I said, I did watch for all the really crappy parts of this movie, and there were a lot of them, and some just super cringeworthy ones that literally made my stomach hurt. I still watched this movie with a little bit of a smirk. Like I said, there was a little bit of the nerds kind of, make stuff happen, even though we know that it's completely ineffectual, right?
Yeah.
But I would give this movie a solid 82 and definitely recommend that people watch it. Would I recommend that kids watch it? No, not at all. I wouldn't even say that any child should be watching this movie, just because of the whole sorority camera panty raid, unconsensual sex thing. I think this is just goes way too far.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna give it a 50. And that I only think this movie should be viewed in the lens of a college course about identity politics and understanding that the reason why we have kind of this pendulum swing now towards left very hard, stuff and people identifying all sorts of things is in response to what we thought was okay in the 80s. And so in the context of this being our normal, a lot of, I think, what is happening now that seems too much and is now fueling a reverse pendulum to the right, I think that this kind of helps illustrate this weird cultural thing where we have too offensive, too open. And so in that sense, I think it's interesting. Mm-hmm. But I think that the Takashi character every time is so bothersome when I watched it that I had a really hard time enjoying it.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I gave this, there was a time when I would have given this movie a 98, I think.
A perfect score.
A teenager, a perfect score. The greatest movie. And now I think I would say, I'll say 75 because there's some really funny lines in it. I definitely was laughing at times. And I think if you just take away, the searching for jailbait, the filming without consent, the sexploitation of minor, revenge porn, the chemical weapons and battery, the sexual battery, theft, criminal trespass, the attempted murder, the insurance fraud, the bestiality, aggravated battery, and animal cruelty, I think it's a pretty sweet movie. So, I think under that lens,
it's a 6-minute movie if you take away all of that. Jimmy. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So we didn't even talk about the 60-year-old woman flirting with the 12-year-old boy that went looking for a room to rent. But anyway, the point is, there's other movies to watch, so I don't know that you need to watch this one.
Oh, so terrible.
Oh, yes. Well, I was a little worried that you would be very upset at us, Shonda, after watching this. So I'm just glad that we're still friends.
Always. I don't think there hasn't been one yet where I'm just I'm unfriending these guys.
Soul Man was close though.
Yeah.
Soul Man got very close. Yeah. Soul Man got close. I think Hardbodies, Porky's got close too.
I almost unfriended you guys over Porky's too.
Well, that was a hoot. Thanks for enduring that. I love you guys.
Let's
never do this
again. You got not at least not Revenge of the Nerds. So let's be thinking about the next one. I can't wait to do this again.
There's 3 more of these movies. We could keep going. There's
good Lord,
3 more.
No, we're done. We're done with Revenge of the Nerds.
I think we've scratched this itch.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah. We're done.
It does leave an itch. It does. I'll give you that. At least a weird,
Still have a rash.
bumpy.
You want to take a shower. That's what it does. It's so gross.
All right.
Until next time.
Love you guys. Bye.
Love you. Bye.